What's going on, guys? Well, I hope you're all happy because Arkansas headed back to the NCAA Tournament for the first time since 2018. We found out in the selection show just probably about an hour ago they're going to be taking on Colgate in the first round on Friday. Arkansas 3-seed, Colgate a 14-seed. Jacob Seuss, Tyler Cass. Tyler, this should be a good one. The Hogs finally going back. We finally get the March Madness we've all been waiting for.
Yeah, I mean, that was the first thought I had, was just kind of a breath of relief.
Like, we're here. It happened.
What happened a year ago? It's gone. We're going to Indianapolis, going to the bubble, and Arkansas is taking on Colgate, a team that immediately lends itself to a bunch of jokes that we're not going to make.
Yeah, I mean, and we're not going to pretend to be Colgate experts over here because this is a team in upstate New York. They won the Patriot League this year, and I hear they score a lot.
Yeah, they average, I was just looking at KenPom, they're the 25th fastest team in the country by adjusted tempo. The flip side of that is that Arkansas is number 18, so kind of expect a lot of points, a fast pace in this game, which we've seen the Hogs have proven that they're fine with that. They can hang and handle that, so yeah, a lot of points. I think they average about, it was 89 or 88 points per game. And a 17-point margin of victory. I don't think it'll be that against Arkansas.
No, and this is an interesting team in Colgate, playing in the Patriot League, like we said. Just looking at some stats here. So they went 14-1 this year. Arkansas yesterday, with their loss to LSU, that was their first game all year where they played back-to-back. Colgate, on the other hand, what they did in the Patriot League this year, every single game was back-to-back. They only played on the weekends, and they played in spans of 2-game series. So, for instance, they would go to Boston University, play them on Saturday, then play them again on Sunday. So Colgate, coming into the NCAA tournament, they kind of have this back-to-back, or even with one day in between. They know how to play in a couple games in a short amount of time.
Yeah, which, I mean, for Arkansas, you hope doesn't actually matter because, of course, they'll have a week to prepare before this one, but I thought it was interesting. Their only loss all year was to Army in, I think, the second game of those back-to-backs, and it was by 2 points. So really, Colgate's either dominated their competition or been close in every single game that they've played. Like you mentioned, so they only played Patriot League opponents, and they didn't start till January. So they've only played 15 games, which at this point in the year, with a team that likes to play such a high pace, you got to start thinking about legs, because that was the kind of deal at the end of that LSU game. Arkansas looked gassed, and like you said, first time they'd played back-to-back all year, not a thing that actually have to do in the tournament where at least there's a day in between games, but when you've played 15 games versus nearly 30 games, it's going to be a bit more wear and tear on your body.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about those Hogs. So a lot of inexperienced postseason basketball-wise on this team. Jalen Tate at Northern Kentucky, the only one on Arkansas who's played an NCAA tournament game before. Tyler, do you think that affects them at all? Does that experience really matter come Friday?
At the beginning of the season, I probably would have said, yeah. I would have said that's something we thought about with this Arkansas team was, would that affect them all season? And then as we kind of saw all season, it didn't affect them. I think most importantly, Eric Musselman has NCAA tournament experience, and that's kind of when everyone was introduced to Muss, if you weren't familiar with his dad, was when he took Nevada on that magical run a few years ago. So he knows what it takes to get, deep in the tournament, and he's been really good this season at kind of communicating his message to the rest of the team.
And Muss, we heard from him right after the announcement. I mean, man, he was fired up. He jumped right on that Zoom call. He was certainly ready to go. I mean, he was pretty upset yesterday with the LSU loss, but in the span of one day, I mean, he's excited. He's going to have this team ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, it was playing over at Jacob's desk, and I was, in my desk, 10 feet away, and I just hear blasting on the speaker, "Let's go, let's rock and roll, baby." I was like,
classic
all right. Muss is ready to go. He had some pointed words too. He's clearly been taking down names. Someone asked him about some people have been saying that you played a weak non-conference, and he immediately interrupted the question, apologized for interrupting, and then said, "Look, I know exactly who's been saying that, and they didn't do their homework." So yeah, Eric Musselman is ready, he stays ready, and he gets his teams ready. And he also brought up the fact that his assistant, Anthony Ruda, who's in charge of scheduling and apparently bracketology, had Colgate pegged. They spent the entire bus ride in Indianapolis breaking down Colgate. I don't know if that's a true thing or if that's, some mind games, but hey, that's at least a 5-hour advantage they've gotten scouting already.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about that weak non-conference schedule, 3 teams they played won their conference and are heading to the NCAA tournament. So I don't know how you can say it was that weak, but as far as other SEC teams go, Arkansas is in the South region where Florida is also in. Baylor is the number 1 seed. Arkansas, if they can knock off Colgate, they're going to play the winner of Texas Tech and Utah State. State, UNC is a team that's in there. So just off initial glance, it's a region that, you don't have Gonzaga, you have a good team in Baylor. It's a region with a lot of firepower that a lot of these games are really going to come down to the wire.
You didn't even mention Villanova,
Yes.
who's won this thing.
There was so many.
And you brought it up there. If this goes chalk, in order to advance to the Sweet 16, Arkansas would have to face Texas Tech. And of course, Arkansas, very familiar with head coach Chris Beard. A lot of people, when Mike Anderson was fired, that was right after Texas Tech. And Chris Beard, of course, with the one season at UALR, a lot of people threw that out there as you got to throw all the money in the world at Chris Beard. He just took Texas Tech to a Final Four. Of course, that didn't happen. Eric Musselman's here in place. I think most Arkansas fans are really happy with how that shook out. Not to look past Colgate. I know every single member of the Arkansas men's team would be screaming at me right now to not talk about beyond that. But it would be a fun matchup if we saw Arkansas and Texas Tech, Beard versus Musselman, with a spot in the Sweet 16 on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just watching that selection show, not having the tournament last year, it was a selection show like one we've never seen before, specifically because you have teams on standby. Obviously, all these guys going to Indianapolis. The whole tournament's there this year. But you have teams on standby because of COVID issues. Ole Miss, one of those teams. So their season is over, kind of. They're going to hang around for the first 2 rounds and maybe sneak in if someone comes down with COVID issues. Hopefully not, because everyone in Indianapolis, it's a good thought with the bubble, but one team comes down, you may start to see some sort of a domino effect.
Yeah, so it was interesting. We saw, Virginia, Kansas, Duke, not that it matters, they weren't making the tournament anyway, but Virginia and Kansas, 2 teams that had to drop out of their conference tournaments because of COVID issues, and we're kind of wondering how that affect the NCAA tournament. Obviously, both made it. So what they're doing is the rest of those teams, the ones who didn't contact trace and didn't test positive, they're already in Indianapolis. But the members of Virginia and Kansas and those teams that had issues, they'll have to wait a couple days until they're fully cleared and in order to join their teams in Indy. But I think everyone will have their full teams in Indianapolis Friday or Thursday night for the first 4, and then Friday and Saturday, barring, knock on wood,
Right.
any issues before then.
And we saw it already. Arkansas is actually, they're already in Indy. They went straight from Nashville right to Indy. They actually went to the Motor Speedway today, and then they all got together for the selection show. And now Muss was also saying on the Zoom, they all have to isolate now. They're all going back to their hotel where they're all going to be by themselves. The rest of the next couple days are just going to be Zoom meetings for the team before they can get together and get going. So it is a tournament unlike any others, but Arkansas is in it. So Tyler, initial thoughts on how far this team can go. I know we said we're not looking past Colgate, but they're the 8th ranked team in the country. They're a 3rd seed. That's their highest seed for the first time since 1995. Do you expect this team to get out of opening weekend?
You do.
Tell the people what they want to hear.
For one major reason. Yes, North Carolina is in their region, but they're in that 8-9 game. They wouldn't meet until the Elite 8, and that's been the heel, the Achilles heel for Arkansas fans has been the Tar Heels, unfortunately. They'd have to go through Baylor. So, yeah, I'll give them the win over Colgate, win over Texas Tech or Utah State, onto the Sweet 16. And then, honestly, anything other than a trip to the Sweet 16 is going to be a disappointment. Which is a kind of surprising thing to say with a team that was pretty much all new faces in Eric Musselman's 2nd year, his first trip to the NCAA tournament with Arkansas. But if they don't make it out of the first weekend, you're going to have a lot of disappointed people in Fayetteville.
This team was dead in the water back in January. They got blown out by LSU. They got blown out by Alabama. At that point, we weren't even close to talking about seeding in the NCAA tournament. We were talking that this team probably isn't going to make the NCAA tournament. Of course, then we all know how it went down. 11 straight SEC wins. So if you would have told any Arkansas fan that back in January that this is where we would end up, that you would be disappointed if they didn't make it out of opening weekend, they probably would have laughed in your face. But here we are. I totally agree with you. If they don't make it out of this first weekend and get to the Sweet 16 at the very minimum, this team surely has the potential to really be one of those teams that kind of gets hot and runs a table. They're peaking at the right time despite that loss to LSU yesterday, like you mentioned earlier. That was just a case they were a bit gassed, especially in the second half. We know they can beat LSU. We know they can beat Alabama, but it's been all SEC, a weaker SEC this year. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see how this team kind of adjusts and develops to playing non-conference teams again, especially when the lights are shining the most bright.
Yeah, they'll have their legs back after a week off. They'll have Jalen Williams back, which was a huge part of that SEC tournament, was missing the freshman out of Fort Smith Northside. The first weekend, I wouldn't be shocked. We talked about how much Colgate likes to score. They're 14-1, all Patriot League opponents. It might be a close game, but I have a feeling that at the pace that Colgate likes to play, it's a game that could go real quickly in the Hogs' favor and turn into some sort of blowout situation.
Absolutely, and you just mentioned Jalen Williams. We expect him to be in the lineup Friday, which would be huge for this team. We saw how much they missed him. Even in the Mizzou game, you could tell there were points in the game they missed Williams. Justin Smith, another big one, coming over from Indiana, now getting back to go to Indiana for the NCAA tournament. He's got to be feeling really good and kind of rubbing it in the face of his former team that they're not in the tournament and he's playing for the big one.
Yeah, I mean, it is obviously disappointing that, you can't have all the friends and family that you'd want there. But as we've seen with Eric Musselman, every little thing that he could use as motivation, he's going to. I'm excited to see what he breaks out, costume-wise, prop-wise. We've seen it throughout, non-conference and SEC play, the different uniforms. Yeah. You got to imagine he's got something cooking for the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, who knows? And it's not something that he's going to come up with this week. He's been thinking about this for a long time, and he's got the national attention now. So, and like we were watching that selection show, it was all focused on Arkansas, their live stream. They wanted to see what the team was going to do. They wanted to see what Muss was going to do. This is a team that, they're not a secret anymore. This is a team that's good, and people know they're good.
Yeah, the number of times I've seen tweets from national media members, why aren't we talking about Arkansas? At a certain point, you're talking about Arkansas. And yeah, look, they didn't win the SEC tournament. That might have bumped them up to the 2 line. The 3 line's kind of where we had them pegged for the last couple weeks or so. And like you said, it's a team we know, they're not streaky, because that would be, win 3 or 4, lose a couple. They're capable of big streaks. But now all that matters, a win streak of 6.
A win streak of 6. That is the most important. Obviously, we're on Facebook right now. We're not on air because of the selection show. 5 News at 10 going to go on a little late tonight because of the Grammys. But be sure to stay up with us. We're going to hear from Muss. We're going to hear from 4 or 5 different players, possibly, just about how excited they are. So Arkansas, Colgate, Friday in the first round of the NCAA tournament. We will be sure to have all your coverage this week. And until then, we will see you tonight on your 5 News at 10.